What's the most adult decision you had to make before you turned 18? When I was 15, my dad lost his job at the manufacturing plant where he'd worked for 18 years. Within 4 months, my parents filed for bankruptcy. Our 3-bedroom house in a Minneapolis suburb went into foreclosure, and we moved into a 2-bedroom apartment 40 minutes away. My brother had already left for college with a baseball scholarship, so it was just me, my parents, and my younger sister Rose. The first sign that something was changing came one Thursday evening. Dad called a family meeting at the kitchen table. His eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep. He told me I'd always been the responsible one and that they needed me to step up now. Mom explained that they couldn't afford to keep everyone in school. Rose was only in 7th grade, but I was almost done. I stared at them, not comprehending at first. When I asked what they meant, Dad was blunt. You need to drop out and get a full-time job. It's your duty to help the family. I was a junior with a 3.9 GPA. I'd been planning to apply to colleges the following year. The thought of dropping out made my stomach turn, but I didn't argue that night. I just nodded and went to my room. The next morning, I went to school as usual, but stopped by my guidance counselor's office during lunch. Ms. Farrell listened carefully as I explained my situation. She advised me not to make any decisions yet and said she would look into some options. At home, I told my parents I needed 2 weeks to finish some important projects before dropping out. They agreed, seeming relieved I wasn't fighting them on this. Dad had found work at a warehouse for much less pay, and Mom had taken a cashier position at a grocery store, but they were barely covering rent. Ms. Farrell called me back to her office 3 days later. She had printouts of scholarship applications, information about emancipation, and a list of work-study programs. She explained that my situation qualified me for hardship consideration, but I would need to decide what I wanted. That weekend, I applied for a job cleaning houses through a service that didn't check ages too carefully. I started working every Saturday and Sunday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. The work was exhausting, scrubbing toilets, mopping floors, dusting endless shelves of knickknacks in wealthy people's homes. I handed most of my earnings to my parents, keeping just enough to buy application fees for scholarships and programs. You're a good girl. This helps more than you know, Mom said when I gave her my first paycheck. During weeknights, I stayed at school until the library closed at 8 p.m., using their computers to work on applications. I told my parents I had joined a study group. When I got home, I would help Rose with her homework, then stay up until 2 a.m. completing my own assignments. By December, dark circles had formed under my eyes. My grades slipped from A's to B's, but I maintained enough to keep my GPA above 3.5. My cleaning supervisor liked my work and gave me more houses, which meant more money but less time for schoolwork. At Christmas, we couldn't afford presents. Instead, Dad announced what he called good news. He told me he'd found me a full-time position at the warehouse and that I could start after New Year's. I insisted I needed to finish the semester, just 1 more month. He frowned but agreed. In January, I received my first acceptance letter with a full scholarship to a boarding school 3 states away. The program was designed for high-achieving students from difficult circumstances. I hid the letter in my backpack and continued applying to summer programs and colleges. By March, I had been accepted to 3 programs that would house and feed me while providing education. I chose the one that offered the most comprehensive scholarship and began preparing secretly. I sold my guitar and video games to a pawn shop for cash. I gathered my birth certificate and social security card from the family filing cabinet when my parents were at work. The hardest part was telling Rose. One afternoon while our parents were both working, I explained that I would be leaving. She begged me to take her with me. I told her I couldn't, but promised I'd send for her as soon as I could. I left on a Wednesday in April. My parents had gone to work and Rose was at school. I packed 1 suitcase with clothes and necessities, left a letter on my bed explaining where I was going, and took the bus to the station. I was terrified the whole trip, expecting police to stop me, but nothing happened. My parents called me 17 times the first day. I answered once. You abandoned your family, Dad said. I hung up and blocked their number. 3 weeks after I left, Rose called from a friend's phone. They want me to quit school too, she whispered. That summer, I worked with my school advisors to help Rose apply for the same program. By September, she had joined me at the boarding school. Our parents tried to fight it, but with my emancipation granted and Rose's documentation of educational neglect, the court sided with us. What I never told anyone until now. The day I left, I found papers showing my parents had withdrawn $40,000 from my college fund, money from my grandmother's inheritance specifically designated for my education, to pay off their credit card debt before declaring bankruptcy. They had already decided my future wasn't worth protecting, long before they asked me to sacrifice it.